positives for people, to have syphilis. And hey, with this whole COVID-19 thing, they talked about people went to get tested. I believe it was in London. They went to get tested, and they found that the test was actually contaminated. So you go in and you don't have it, you get tested. Which I'm not telling anybody, what to do or how to do it. I'm just presenting information, in case YouTube wants to watch this. I'm just presenting information, but basically the test gave them the disease. So now because you got tested, now you you actually got the thing. Now how the fuck would a test kit get infected like that? It's just a lot of questions which have not been answered, or which the answer is very strange, or but going back to this, because YouTube is they actually showed the president of YouTube. She's talking about cracking down, and people are talking about vitamin C and take this and that to kill the virus. Well, hey, for every disease, unless the Most High just really wants you to have that, there is a cure. For every ailment, disease, there is a cure. All right, it says PHS nurse Eunice Rivers remembers that the clinic was overflooded with people coming in to get their blood drawn. Right. Of course, the people milled around like so many sheep. Yeah, these people are sheep, man. And scriptures tell you, how we got many of our people who know the truth and understand the truth, and they care not for the flock. All right. Adding that 316 members were given treatment before 2 p.m. Most of them have never seen a doctor before. And this chick, Eunice Rivers, this is a so-called black woman that they used her to go in. I don't know if that's really her or if this is a movie depiction, but I think this is a movie depiction. I think this is really her. They used her basically to go in and put this shit into the black community, right? The same way they're using this chick Kizmikia, So you have to ask yourself: did she actually know what was going on, or was this all just an accident? Or hey, if you're injecting people and you keep seeing symptoms and signs, you'd have to know. You'd have to know. You'd have to know something, man. Right, and this, man, the Lord saw all this wicked ass shit. But anywho, back to it. It said, and the physicians ran various tests while telling the men that they were being treated for the nebulous disorder, bad blood, which commonly referred to a wide array of symptoms from anemic blood to muscle aches. And again, man, the scriptures say the simple believeth every word. It says what? The blood is the life force of the body. And so you can't have bad blood. Now you can have toxins in your blood, as we know now. There ain't no such thing as no fucking bad blood. All right. And it says doctors dispense treatment in the form of vitamins, ineffectual doses of arsenic, and worse than useless mercury salve, which mercury is horrible. Mercury, you're not supposed to put mercury into the body. It says mercury has devastating side effects, injury to the nervous system, mental deficits, hair and tooth loss, kidney and heart disease, and lung injury. Man, so they was giving people mercury too. And just going to show you once again, man. Look at his track record. It says. After the first clinics enabled doctors to identify syphilitics, they selected study participants. They wanted only men, right? And that's how you attack a nation. All right, when Nebuchadnezzar was set up, and he sent out. He basically sent out for young Israelite men to come to his palace. You know, of course, Daniel and his three Akim, came with him. We know about them and the things that they were doing. But basically, they were trying to indoctrinate Israel, because that's how you do it, man, through the men, and they understand that. That's why they got the man out the house here in America, because they saw the potential for us rising up and for us taking things back. All right, and so they came and they destroyed the household, and a lot of people still haven't caught on to that. All right, it says some time ago. This is the notice they sent out for these subjects for spinal taps, because they were doing spinal taps too. That's what. And a spinal tap is where is it at? They actually take a long ass needle and they inject it into your back, because they're trying to get to the artery. Into the spine is basically one of the main parts of your neurological system. You got a lot of stem cells in there. They were doing these fucking spinal taps, man. Which that shit hurts like a motherfucker. That's one of the most painful things you could do is put a needle into your spine, where it's just a lot of nerves. Look at that, man. Man. It says, some time ago you were given a thorough examination, and since that time we hope that you have gotten a great deal of treatment for bad blood. You will now be given your last chance to get a second examination. This examination is a very special one, and it is finished. After it is finished, you will be given a special treatment if it is believed that you are in a condition to stand it. Remember, this is your last chance for special free treatment. Be sure to meet the nurse, right? Hey, it's special treatment. We got this special cure. Now come on in and get it. Otherwise, you won't be able to return to work. It says they ran spinal taps and selected 399 men with syphilis as subjects to observe. Jumping through it again. And eventually, of course, they died. They said, "What? As I see it, we have no further interest in these patients until they die." Like Joyce Heth, the aged black woman who was displayed and dissected for profit by P.T. Barnum, these men were regarded by an impatient PHS as living cadavers, more valuable to American medicine, dead than alive. And you got a lot of things in the medical field, cutting you open, cutting this, cutting that. And the scriptures say, "What, you make no incisions or cuttings in the flesh." All right, and that's what they would do, man. You die, they cut you open, they cut your organs out, they study you, and then that's why the healthcare system in the U.S., it's been so built up, Salakia, because they've basically experimented. They've got the experiment on Jake and fucking, try to figure out everything, man. The scriptures say this man is wiser than Daniel, excuse me. However, you cutting up a dead body, man. That's just sick. All right, but Esau was willing to do that. It says these reports would be compared with those of the bodies on controlled subjects to characterize in terrible detail the ravages of syphilis. However, his physicians anticipated difficulty in obtaining the men's bodies for autopsy, largely because, as it was discussed in chapter 5, African Americans bitterly resented the fact that their bodies were often stolen and exploited for anatomical examination. They didn't, nobody wants their fucking body, being donated to science for some people to fucking cut you up and take pictures of you, all this sick ass shit, man. Nobody, hey. It says, so here's what these devils did. It said, because they feared losing track of the men before autopsy, the PHS doctors added inducements that maintained the treatment fiction. Eunice Rivers, the eldest daughter of a Georgia farmer, yes, so her father is actually a farmer, and one of only 4 black public health nurses in the state of Alabama, was recruited from her dispiriting job as a night nurse to serve as a scientific assistant, to assist in procedures and examinations and to keep track. So she had to know. She had to know what she was doing. She had to fucking know. It says, Rivers looked in on the men periodically and dispensed the medicines, mostly aspirin, iron tonic, and vitamins that made them believe that they were in treatment. Rivers injected a bit of variety into the lives of drudgery and dispiriting poverty when she drove them into town for their doctor's appointments in a shiny black car and distributed the occasional inducements of $1 or $2. Right, so she played them basically. You know, she'd show up in a car, which a lot of these people, they were walking. She would show up, you know, have money. She waited while they visited friends and marveled at the manicured university lawns and the painted shops on the city street. Oh, man. And that's exactly what Jake does, man. They follow Esau. You know, Esau's pulling up in Bentleys and Rolls Royces, and, you know, he's done all kind of wickedness. He's defrauded you. And, you know, our people are just so impressed, and they want to be so like this man. You know, our women want to dress like the damn Edomite woman. They want to act like her, have the same mentality. All right. Meanwhile, you know, they're plotting on ways that they could destroy you, your house, your family, and for many years to come too. All right. It says, however, the men did not know that Rivers was also charged with tracking their movements. Yes, she was actually charged with tracking the places they went, ultimately to ensure their presence at autopsy, which she didn't mention to the men, but would describe to their survivors as an operation to gain their assent. The PHS doctors still feared that the men would evade the hospital and die at home, cheating the researchers of the chance to autopsy them, so they offered free burials as an inducement. Man. More perks, right? The simple believeth every word. All right, it says, Habakkuk 2:15, woe unto him that giveth his neighbor drink, that puttest thy bottle to him, and makest him drunken also, that thou mayest look on their nakedness. And in this particular case, they literally wanted to look on them, but of course it's talking about, you know, giving these philosophies over to them. And that's exactly what they were doing. They were feeding them with bullshit. And it says, the syphilitic men were monitored so well that most received no treatment for 40 years, despite the myriad. So they did this experiment for 40 years. 40 years they got away with this. Yep. It says, the Milbank Fund, an organization with strong eugenic leanings. Yeah, you got a lot of eugenicists. All right, and Bill Gates' family, has been said that his family and the Sanger family are tied and connected. All right, you can look that up. It said agreed to pay the $50 fee, which was split by the funeral parlor and the physician who performed the autopsy. Right. It says. In 1934, PHS doctors met with local black doctors and asked them not to treat the men who were receiving care in the research study. The black doctors agreed. In 1941, the PHS circulated a list of subjects' names to the draft board, instructing military physicians not to treat any men who were inducted. When the United States entered World War II, Tuskegee syphilis subjects were exempted from the draft because the PHS feared that they would be treated for syphilis in the military. So they actually were able to control and manipulate the draft, which is supposed to be random, in order to keep these men out so they could continue to experiment on them, right? And this confirms something, because you have a lot of Jakes who talked about, um, how our people were disproportionately drafted in to the military, during Vietnam or whatever. And I've spoken to a lot of Edomites who've actually mentioned, one particular. He was a teacher at my high school. He said, "Yeah, my number was so high. I knew I would never get drafted." That's the case with a lot of Edomites. They kept them out of the battle, and then they sent Jake in to do the dirty work, basically. All right, and they were able to pretend like it was random. Oh, it's a random draft. If you don't go, you're gonna get locked up. Just like, hey, this again, this vaccine. A lot of people, they're gonna bring out the big guns. They're gonna tell them, look, you don't take this, you're gonna have to be locked up. We're gonna do all this stuff. We're gonna take your job. We're gonna take your house, whatever the case may be. Hey, ultimately, step two, the chip, the mark of the beast, the thing that comes next. They're gonna hit you with they're gonna hit you with the same stuff. Look, you don't take this, we know that you're a terrorist. We know that you might have whatever disease. So you gotta take it, or else we're gonna lock you up. We're gonna do all. Hey, don't take it. Don't take it. Maintain integrity. Maintain your faith. All right. Hey, the Lord never leaves us in a fucked up scenario, not once in the whole Bible. Talking about the so-called black, so-called Native American, and so-called Latino people, right, through the lines of their fathers. It says, and that again, that proves that draft thing is manipulated too. They manipulate that shit. But it says, that's why they have you check what race you are, because then they could that's how they manipulate it. You check what race you are, and boom. Now they know a certain, now they know, look, it's the X amount of black people here, but that's why that census stuff is wicked too. But wrapping this up, because this is all good info, but it is long. It says, yet when penicillin proved an effective and safe cure for syphilis in 1943, a vigorous national program of treatment ensued, and some determined subjects did succeed in circumventing the government dragnet to obtain treatment. 30 men, 7.5% of the infected study participants, managed to obtain an effective degree of treatment, prompting Vanderlei to worry that the treatment might interfere with the study data. Yeah, that's all he's interested in, the data. I hope that the availability of antibiotics has not interfered too much with the project. PHS doctors knew that this degree of treatment hopelessly polluted any data that they might salvage from the study, so they later put a fictitious spin on the number of participants who have received adequate treatment. So they actually lie, bolstered by the oft-repeated fiction that blacks did not want or seek out medical care. Oh my! So it's oh man, this man is completely the devil. These men still regard hospitals and medicine with suspicion and prefer an occasional dose of time-honored herbs or tonics to modern drugs. But we know that if they really knew the right herbs to take, that they could have cured the diseases as well. So that just shows that they know time-honored herbs. They know about the herbs. They know about the tonics. All right. As men begin to die, the PHS perform autopsies and regularly publish the results in medical journals. They even share study results. This is the important part too. They even share study results at the 1936 American Medical Association meeting, which means many white physicians were informed of the study's details, but not African American physicians, which were largely barred from AMA membership. So you got Jake thinking, that's why the scriptures talk about this is not our rest, because now you actually have Jakes who become doctors. They become lawyers. They've gained these high positions. But as you can see, the certain key information and secret information is kept secret amongst them in house, and it's not shared and it's not put out there. It said 1936 AMA, and that should make you, if you're into that, or maybe you grew up understanding that should make you question the whole system, question the whole thing, and you become a nurse or a doctor or something, they say, well, look, you gotta take this chip. You have to give all that stuff up. And that's why they said what a rich man basically is they're scarcely gonna make it. You know, like a camel having to go through the eye of a needle. It's gonna be very difficult because you have to give up, you know, all the years that you put into receive, get that trade or whatever. You know, you're gonna have to basically give that up at a certain time. You're gonna have to have the self discipline to do all that. Right? And ultimately, you know, Yahweh Shema Shah sees your sacrifice too. But you know, it's just got to. It has to be the right situation. Basically, is what I'm saying. You know, if you do. You know, if it's no going back, you know, like a situation like this, then you got to do what you got to do. All right, it's all according to the spirit. But it says, the 1936 AMA report revealed that 80% of the infected subjects showed signs of illness. A decade later, the death rate of the infected men was twice that of the control subjects, prompting Wigner to bust smuggling in 1950. We now know, well, we can only surmise before, that we have contributed to their ailments and shortened their lives. Right, he enjoyed that. By 1955, nearly one-third of the autopsied men had died directly of syphilis, and many of the survivors were suffering its deadly complications. 40 wives were infected, and at least 19 children were born with syphilitic birth defects. In 1958, the PHS awarded a certificate of appreciation signed by the Surgeon General and replete with a golden seal to each infected man, along with $25, $1 for each year of the study. Right. So yeah, a year they got a certificate of appreciation and $25 for all that hell and the years of dealing with that they had to go through. And call Allah Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai. That's why we say a Bible ball, because you know, this is the kind of shit that these Edomites will do in order for them to achieve their goals. You know, which we know their goal is to cut the population down to a certain number. You know, for them to be able to go worldwide with the mark of the beast. For them to be able to, especially Jake. You know, they definitely want to cut our numbers down and keep us in a low place. All right, and that's and the Spirit has it. Brothers bringing out. Things on, you know, can you have more than one wife, which the scriptures talks about that. And you know, us having that one wife, that's a way for them to keep our population down, because just like our origins, you know, Isaac had two wives and their two servants, and then from them came all of the nations of Israel. Oh, Salaki, Jacob. I said Isaac. Jacob, right? Jacob had, you know, his two wives, and then their two servants, which they were lesser wives, which they were, but all the children, you know, that they had together, they were all equal under him. They were all equal, and you know, that's where, you know, basically the Israelites come from. All right, so hey, Lord willing, is edifying. You know, this story just goes to show you what happens when you trust the devil, what happens when you trust in his system, you know, whether you be in a high position or a low position. Our Lord willing is edifying.